you for having me. My career at Santa Barbara started about 11 years ago with big cats. So again, very weird transition to snowy plovers, but kind of fell in love with them. I've been working with the plover program since about 2019, 2020-ish. Perfect time, COVID worked out great. But fell in love and have been a part of that program ever since. I just recently became director of animal care at the zoo, so now I oversee that program completely. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we got started, why we got started, and then you guys can ask me questions. Feel free to interrupt my presentation and ask questions. That doesn't offend me. I'm pretty laid back. Plus, it'll help me focus. But yeah, did it work? All right, so I'm going to jump on in. So like we were talking about, it's rescue, rehab, and release, how we can contribute to the snowy plover population. Y'all do the rescuing, we do the rehab and the release, but you join us for both. So why snowy plovers? So a little bit about Santa Barbara Zoo. We tend to focus our conservation efforts. It's part of our mission is conservation. It's a really big deal from top down. So basically our exec team all the way down to our frontline staff. But we focus on hyperlocal species. It doesn't mean we don't contribute to African lions or anything kind of outside that realm, but where we really feel we can kind of make the most impact is going to be our hyperlocal conservation. So before snowy plovers, we were working with California condors, red-legged frogs, sea otters, monarchs, island fox, and then we added snowy plover. We have 6 vehicles that match all those species if you drive by the zoo. They're all wrapped beautifully. So again, it kind of fit our criteria. It's a small species, which means we could do it in a small space because we are kind of locked in our footprint. If y'all have been to Santa Barbara Zoo, bird refuge on one side, freeway on the other, ocean directly in front of us, can't go very far, can't grow very much. So they fit the footprint that we had. Local species, they are federally listed as threatened. So that was a big pull for us. And then one of those recovery actions was to maintain a subpopulation of 1,200 breeding adults in Recovery Unit 5, which is where we fall, for 10 years. And then you guys probably know, but causes a decline are habitat degradation, anthropogenic disturbances, which we talked about at dinner tonight, and then pressure from predation and climate change. So that is kind of how we started this ball rolling. And honestly, it took one person at our zoo to be like, hey, I think we could help this program. And lucky enough, again, our executive team down was all about conservation. And so we were able to kind of jump on that. Oh, yeah, hit me.
That bird looks injured or recovering.
Yes, it was taken by one of our, what should I call them, zoo photographers that was out on a release. I couldn't tell you what happened, but we all noticed those feathers as well. My guess is something. Yeah, like either a gash, like did she avoid a predation attack under a fence or flew into something? Yeah, nope, we noticed the same thing. But it's just so cute with how tall it is. Let's see, there we go. So Nadia is my cohort, and she partially made part of this presentation. I didn't realize how punny she was, and I should have known better. So hatching a conservation program. So this is just kind of a little overview. I know, she loves egg puns. Everything is exciting to her. Could go on for days. So this is kind of an overview of that program, of that rescue, rehab, release. So they are brought into our zoo. We get that phone call, that text message, literally 7 days a week, any time of day. I am salary, so technically I'm always on the clock, y'all. So we will take those calls at any point. They're brought in for a variety of reasons, whether it's site managers deciding that they need to be pulled. So the eggs come in. We have taken injured chicks. We've also taken adults, and I'll be honest with you, the adults are a challenge. They tend to be much more flighty, kind of skittish, and so holding them for medical treatment is very challenging because every time you go in to try to treat that bird, they're going to panic and we house them in what we call our AICUs, our critical care units, and they're just hitting the sides all the time. So we really struggle with adults. They are a rarity for us. It's usually an oiled bird or a broken leg. and our vets and our team do the best we can, but they are probably, nope, they are the biggest challenge for us. Chicks are much easier with HPAI going on right now. We do anything that's not in an egg gets quarantined until we can get a negative HPAI test completed, because we do house these in a building that is adjacent to our zoo population of birds. So we got to be really careful about that. But that usually recently has been like a super quick turnaround. So those chicks are then put up with other chicks of similar age. But they come in any of those three lovely forms. And then if they are eggs, we will incubate them, and they really do bounce back way better than you think. So we just brought in an egg that just yesterday, our first egg came into the zoo that was buried during a wind event, unburied. Parents didn't come back, and then it went to an incubator, and it currently doesn't look like it's super fertile, but we've had eggs that we then canned a week later, and all of a sudden they're starting to develop. So nature's crazy. Don't understand it. We're super gentle. I've seen birds on the beach where it's like, how is that egg surviving? Like, we turn these eggs every 4 hours at 25 degrees, blah, blah, blah. The parents don't. I don't understand it, but it's really cool. Fascinating. And then if after hatch, we will take care of them. So they'll go through kind of our AICU. And then from there, they graduate to our tub stage, which is like our first beach stage. And then from there, they go into our flight pen. And basically at each stage, there's certain criteria, weight, and kind of temperature tolerant criteria that they need to meet to move on. And then before they hit release, they again have a certain weight, they have to be a certain age. And for us, they have to have a controlled flight. So we were talking about this at dinner, not just flying from point A to point B, but we usually want them to be circling in our flight pen, because that way we feel comfortable and confident, knock on wood a little bit, that they can avoid predation. So that's kind of our criteria to get them out for release. And somewhere in between that process, we will bring in a bander. The zoo is actively working on trying to become a permitted bander, because we have had some holdup. I'm going to get the turn wrong. Is it lease turn that's nesting similar time? You all nod. Again, mammal background. But we've had some challenges getting banders on site. Totally understandable. Those wild population of birds need to be banded. But that's caused us to hold birds back or release birds without bands. So one of the things that's beautiful about the zoo and having a different revenue of funds is that we can try to have those resources on site and do it ourselves under permits. So that's really exciting for us. So how did we end up doing that? One fits our conservation message, but Monterey Bay Aquarium, don't quote me on it, but I believe they were one of the first facilities, if not the first facility to do this plover program. So I'm not gonna lie, we copy and pasted. They had the protocols, it was working, they had a ton of success. We met with them a lot. Our staff went up to Monterey Bay, met with their team, saw their setup, realized how doable it was for us, and realized the need that they had. They were turning away eggs because they didn't have time, not time, space, and resources for them. And if we had kind of this middle section, so you got Monterey way up north, and we're kind of central south coast. I'm not from California. I know we're sensitive about what we call things, but we're kind of in the middle. So the goals were to reduce travel time for the eggs and birds if they were chicks or adults, and then to greatly reduce that pressure on Monterey Bay Aquarium to accept more eggs. So back in 2016, I was not a part of the program when it came on site, but I was at the zoo. We took in our first cohort. So we only took in 6 individuals that year, and only 2 were released. So not great numbers, but we were able to help. And that was kind of the beginning. That was our gateway drug for plovers. And now you're gonna see a whole bunch of numbers. So basically we have increased every single year. And Cynthia, I don't know if you feel different, but it seems like every year we're getting eggs sent to the zoo sooner and sooner in the season. I'm assuming wind events is probably why. Winds, yeah. Yeah, it seems like it's just happening sooner and sooner, which is totally fine. We just prep sooner and sooner. But you can see as we go through the years, we are increasing quite a bit and our release rate is getting pretty high, which is fantastic. So since 2016, we've released 139 plovers from the zoo alone, which is huge. And our overall release rate for our program since we began in 2016, let me see if the percentage is on this one. It might be on the next one. Stand by. And then kind of, if you look at 2019, we had a little bit of a dip and then we went up. That is when we decided to completely construct a dedicated plover space on grounds. So when we first started this program, we basically, we took a holding space that used to hold monkeys in our backup space that guests weren't around very often, and just said, you know what, this is gonna become dedicated snowy plover space. We're gonna incubate in our clinic and do chick rearing in our clinic, and then our flight pen will be this backup space that used to be a primate space. Because you adapt in a zoo field, in an animal field you adapt. And then in 2019, we decided to construct dedicated plover space. So we actually were building a new building for kind of our ambassador birds that are on grounds in our zoo population. And at the back of that, how many people have been to the Santa Barbara Zoo? Oh, so many of you. So you know that boardwalk that you come down from Gorillas and it kind of comes up towards the barnyard? So the next time you're on that boardwalk, you're going to see signage that matches the beach signage of telling you how to stay back, what the fencing looks like, keep your dog on a leash. If you look beyond that, you're going to see a bunch of bamboo that is very purposeful. And just beyond that bamboo is a kind of our mesh flight pen. So if you look really closely, you can see plovers in there. I know, right? It's exciting. And so that is a fully dedicated space. And next to that flight pen is actually a full incubation room. So we moved all our operations up, which again, for quarantine purposes is amazing, right? Because that frees up our clinic at the zoo while increasing our capacity for doing this rehabilitation program on zoo grounds. So it was kind of a twofold win for us, and it's super, super exciting. And then we do have a dedicated quarantine space kind of tucked down the back road. If you're on the zoo train, you're getting all the insider tips. You're on the zoo train, you're going to see kind of our vet clinic and then a couple of holdings, and they'll be like, there's the keeper space. To the right of the keeper space is our quarantine hallway. So that's where those chicks come in for their HPAI testing, which is really exciting. Of course. We have not yet. Knock on wood. We are hoping it stays that way. But obviously we're testing our population at the zoo as well, our animal population that we manage along with these birds that we bring in. So no, and I hope it stays that way. I know, right? It's terrifying. If I'm being honest, it is a very scary thing. From a zoo side, we're no longer asked to cull our population if we have a positive test. We're able to kind of manage that individual. Whereas when it first came out, oh gosh, when was that? Like 20, we went in full like bio suits. Everyone had respirators. It was a little intense. But when we originally had that in place, our kind of hot trigger points were a lot wider because we were afraid we were going to be asked to cull animals. And that's not the case anymore. So we have not, we have not used it on our zoo population. California condors that are on site are a little bit different because they're managed by Fish and Wildlife. We just house them. So they have been vaccinated, and our turkey vulture that's next to them has been vaccinated. Good questions. Yeah.
Avian.
Yes, HPAI. Yep.
Question from Audi.
Oh, yes, so sorry. Yes. Any other questions before I shift gears? Yeah. Great question. So when we get an egg in, you guys saw the cute little tiny egg. It's about this big, right? Really little. We bring it in and we get it from our partners and we take it up to our plover room. And unfortunately, we don't really bring our partners up because of quarantine purposes. But we have several staff on site that can actually, basically we take that egg and we turn on a high powered flashlight essentially, and we hold the air cell end, so the fat end of that egg up to that flashlight. And that allows us to see through and look for veins or movement, or we use the term sloshy. So we'll rotate the egg this way. And if the yolk moves with it, that's considered sloshy and usually not fertile. So that's how we make that first distinction of, do we think this egg is close to hatch which means we're not going to put it on our rollers. So the incubator has rollers inside that will rotate those eggs, like I was saying. And that the rotation basically keeps the yolk from adhering to one part of the egg. Does that make sense? If it adheres to part of the egg, it's usually not going to be viable, or you're going to have a malfunction during hatching. The chick will be in a malposition, it won't hatch. So fun fact, they have to be in the absolute correct position to hatch successfully. So that's another reason that I have no idea. I truly am fascinated by it. Like, it is mind-blowing because I can say it as part of the Plover program, we micromanage these eggs once they come to us, right? Like, we are taking measurements, we are tracking humidity and temperature when we just have eggs 3 times a day. So we're tracking that. And then we are making sure they're rotating at the appropriate frequency. Who figured out that frequency? I don't know. It was before my time. But basically, if they don't have their head tucked under, I believe it's their right wing, they will not hatch correctly. And so at the zoo, we can notice that if they haven't hatched in 48 hours, we'll start to assist hatch to figure out what's going on. So we'll start kind of very gently opening that eggshell, but you have to do it slowly because their veins have to reabsorb. So if you go too fast, you could cause them to hemorrhage and bleed out. So I know, I feel like I'm telling a horror story. So it's a very delicate process, but we handle as soon as an egg gets to us, so that, say they find a nest and maybe the timing's a little off because something happened or it was missed, because they're really hard to find. Like, I've only gone on one nest monitoring and I was like, that's a nest. So that tells us how far along is that egg and is it viable. And so the egg we got in yesterday, it sort of looked like that yolk was adhered to the top, but we're going to leave it for a week because we have had success with those eggs somehow figuring out they're getting incubated properly and the appropriate parameters, and they'll start regrowing, essentially. Like, they're going to develop and have veins and things like that. It's mind-blowing. Like, we have entire courses about egg incubation. It's fast. We send keepers every year down to San Diego for an egg incubation workshop, and it's like 3 days of eggs. It's crazy. It's super cool. But only certain people can handle, right? Because they got to know what they're looking for. And then as those eggs progress, we'll track the time. And we have a really great program that, again, my cohort Nadia made, that will alert us if an egg is kind of overdue. We would know anyways, but that'll tell us, like, hey, do we need to look at this? Do we need to try to assist hatch? It's internally pipped, meaning it's broken through the air cell, but it hasn't broken that hard shell, which is an external pip. So we also have a timeline between internal pip and external pip. So again, it's crazy that these birds do it on their own, right? And rotate those eggs. And it's like a quarter turn this direction at this time interval. And again, who came up with that? I don't, some brilliant scientist, because it works. But it's crazy how eggs work, if I'm just being honest. But speaking about hatch, so this is our hatch success rate. It's unadjusted versus adjusted. Again, not a biologist or conservationist, so I'm going to do my best at reading these. But basically, our red is fail, our green is hatch. Our overall unadjusted hatch rate for the entire program that it's been running is 46.9, which sounds low, right? I can be honest about that. But that's because it's counting the eggs that came in that weren't actually viable. So we're going to take every egg regardless. So that could be an egg that is cracked and we need to patch. And the danger with that is bacteria. And usually that egg's not going to survive, just unfertile, or it was abandoned. We've had eggs that have gone into the ocean and come back out and still been fine. And we've had eggs that have gone into the ocean and not been fine. So there's a lot of different reasons, but the amount of eggs we take in, a decent amount are not viable. So that adjusted hatch rate then for 2024 was 88.5, which is kind of cool. It's a high percentage, a lot higher than if we didn't do anything. I'm reading my notes to make sure I hit everything. So yeah, the function of hatch, I'm getting excited and I'm not reading. The function of the hatch success rate is highly dependent on the quality of eggs that's brought into the zoo. So many don't show signs of developing, and no known egg husbandry practices would bring about success in those situations. But obviously it doesn't cost us very much money to take in eggs, put them in an incubator and let them sit there for a week, and then send someone up to the plover room that's already going to be up at the plover room and have them candle. So it's kind of a worth it to us, right? Like if you don't do it, you'll never know. If we put in a little bit of time and effort, we might have a chick, which is really exciting. And there's a cute little hatching chick who did it right. And then you can still see their yolk sac, which is kind of cool. Yeah. Really big curled up feet and legs. Yeah. And then this is our chick success rate. So basically these are the overall numbers. So on the flip side, once an egg hatches on zoo grounds, almost all of the chicks are successfully released, which I think is super freaking cool. It's incredible what a little bit of time and energy can do. These numbers do also include injured chicks and adults that are brought in for vet assistance. So that's what I was talking about earlier. They're a little bit harder. As someone who has been a part of the program, I will say without our vets, this program wouldn't succeed. We do end up with some eye injuries in our flight pen, whether that's bird on bird aggression. We're not really sure. We now have a camera up there so we can monitor the flight pen remotely because we don't want to be in there all the time. And they're MacGyvers, they're magicians. I don't know, they're like the eggs of the animal people world. So I've seen them break toothpicks apart to try to make a splint for that tiny giant leg that is literally only about this big. They will go to all lengths to save these birds. They are equal to our animal population at the zoo. So they treat them just the same, and it's absolutely incredible what they can do and the way their brains work and their minds work. Yep. Oh, I'll try. Yeah, usually we will candle if it's quote unquote early stages, so there's no veins or anything like that. We're going to give it a week to see if there's any sort of veins developing. That's usually our big cue. And from then on, if we don't see changes, I would say, because it's not a very long hatch window, if we don't see changes every 3 to 5 days, we're going to start to be suspicious. But again, for us, we're going to let eggs go a little farther than their hatch date, because what's the cost to us if we let them go in case they're just slow? And we have had birds that are slow, and it's usually chicks that are male positioned that weren't going to hatch if we didn't help. Does that answer that question? I think it does. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so these numbers only take into account successfully rehabilitated birds that are released back into the wild. 2 of our failed chicks were non-releasable and transferred to the Long Beach Aquarium of the Pacific. So that's the bird we were talking about earlier. We had an adult, nope, we brought it in as an egg and it hatched and ended up with an eye injury where we unfortunately had to remove that eye. But being an AZA facility or an Association of Zoos and Aquariums accredited facility, we have 200 some odd friends that are also accredited that we were able to reach out and say, hey, we have this non-releasable snowy plover. Does anyone have a shorebird exhibit? Very personable bird at this point because we've been handling this bird for eye treatment for a really long time. And they were able to take him and put him in their shorebird exhibit. And now he's telling the snowy plover story there. So not a facility that currently has the program, but wants to be involved. And this was a way that they could do it. So another really good benefit of the zoo being a part of this program. Doop, doop, doop. Sorry, sound effects make my life better. And that's just who I am. So Snowy Santa Barbara Zoo rehab plover movement in the last 5 years. This is one of those things where Nadia put it in here and she didn't give me a whole lot of notes. But I'm pretty sure it is just showing our rebanding or our resightings of banded birds. Can you tell where we release most of our snowy plovers from the Santa Barbara Zoo? Cool Point. That's also where we get a lot of our eggs. So one of our future things is to talk about, do we start releasing where eggs come from? And I think that'll be a bigger conversation with site managers. But obviously we're skewing numbers quite a bit at 139 birds being released at Coal Point. Oh, yes, I absolutely can. So will you say the question again? Because now I'm going to really focus because he was pointing at you.
So by releasing them at Coal Point, does that actually increase a lot the population there? Do the birds move
Gotcha. So the question was, with us releasing so many birds at Coal Point, does that create a new larger population, or do they eventually spread out? That's what the start of this data is trying to capture, because that's our question. And this data probably just started a few years ago for us because we didn't have the capacity to track all the rebanding. And now there's so many wonderful volunteers that take photos, and we can be like, we know exactly where that bird came from. So I know Nadia is working with partners on trying to figure out that information, because we want to know, are we completely skewing this population? Are we going to hit carrying capacity at Colwell Point? And now we're kind of stuck, right? So where do we release these birds? And what does the future of that look like? Because we are very much skewing the population, at least immediate visible effects just based on rebanding or resighting. Does that make sense? See? So here we go. She did read me notes. So we're looking at modeling survivorship to see what effect our program is having within the context of species recovery. This was a team effort. So this is just going to talk a little bit about conservation in zoos and aquariums. I believe there are a lot of animated fancy things. But the moral of the story is that recent history shows that successful conservation by AZA members is achievable. So again, that's the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. That's who Santa Barbara Zoo is accredited by. So AZA and its members continue to stand ready to help as we have historically, and playing a significant role in bringing species back from the brink of extinction. In Santa Barbara Zoo, again, I'm talking about kind of those hyper-local species. So we were heavily involved in California condor, heavily involved in island fox, now heavily involved in Western Snowy Plover, and California red-legged frog. So close to 25 species have been saved or helped to be saved, because it's not just AZA facilities, by AZA zoos and aquariums, and over 40 species have been reintroduced into the wild through AZA managed breeding programs. The latter is what people tend to think of when they think of zoo and aquarium roles in conservation. And that's typically the case, right? But I think what we're trying to show tonight is that our involvement is so much more, right? Us partnering with other facilities and other partners can really make a big difference. And that's super exciting. See, can't help it. See, she's punny again too. I'm just on a roll. The plethora of plover possibilities. So like I said, our plover program started with just 6 small individuals, and it's grown to be a ton more, 139 birds released. But on top of that, at the zoo, we've been able to educate and involve our teen conservation club and direct plover management actions by building those exclosures that we were talking about earlier today for predators that are actually used in the field. So now we're building kind of this excitement with teens, like the future, people that we want to care about these animals. And so the zoo is able to do that, which I love. And on top of building those exclosure pens, we're now implementing a program called Plover Pals. It's an after-school curriculum in local schools, so around Santa Barbara area, that the zoo is historically engaged with. And this is in the hopes that we'll be able to leverage and kind of build curriculum into something teachers can use in the classroom. So we did a very similar kind of thread of a program with our California Condor program. I think I know they're called Condor Kids. You know that, Kristen. And so we're hoping this will take off in the same way. So again, how do we get this information out to our future, right? How do we get it out to our local kids and kind of spread that word and share that excitement and knowledge? Because if you talk to anybody at the zoo involved in the Plover program, you're probably going to ask them to stop talking, because we get really excited about it. And we want everyone to feel that same way. And then on top of that, we're not done yet. We've been assisting with some nest surveys, really hard, so props to y'all. And then we share our messaging kind of in the upper middle corner at what the zoo coins their awareness days. So coming up soon, on April 19th, we'll have our Earth Day celebration. And so we'll actually talk about our Plover program at the zoo. It's a free event. If you're attending the zoo, you are welcome to join. And then we have our rolling billboards. So that lovely Toyota, I know, it gets driven by our conservation team. So we have a separate conservation team that does a lot of field work with California condors. Can't tell, that was the first conservation program at the zoo. And so they're driving these vehicles around, and they're kind of eye-catching, right? So you're going to see that everywhere. And it's kind of our rolling billboard, which is really exciting. Oh no, I lost my mouse. Vince, I found it. So where does the program go from here, right? So we've been releasing plovers like it's our job, and it is, and it's really fun. But now we're figuring out, how do we help our field partners more? Where do we go? How do we set the birds up for more success? So this last season, 2024, we started calculating body condition using a scaled mass index calculation. And that actually came up during, I believe, the annual plover meeting, because Recovery Unit 2 was having concerns with bands slipping off. And we're like, we have birds in hand all the time through our rehabilitation program and at every stage. So we're taking measurements. I'm going to get the bones wrong, so I'm going to look at you. Tarsal, lower leg, and upper leg. And then beak length, which is super simple for us. Again, it's when we're having these birds in hand, it may be one extra handling, but again, that's just going to make these birds more aversive or more afraid of people. So we think the benefit outweighs the cost. And then really exciting, and what these two cute little birds are showing, is we're working on creating a visual development guide that'll be like a little flip book that people in the field can take to kind of be able to guess an age based on the measurements. So if you can't see, those are actually just rulers glued to the back of a box. So we weigh our birds, we set them in there. Our marketing photographer comes up, he shoots a photo, and we just keep rotating birds through. And so we have photos of these birds at every stage. And it's super simple, not fancy, not expensive. We just built a little acrylic box. We made it look pretty, but 2 rulers and a photographer, and he's willing to organize the photos. And so we're hoping it'll help field partners when they're out there looking at chicks to be like, that chick is about this old, and see what else we can help with, which is really cool. And then we were talking at dinner, something that constantly crosses my mind about programs where we're releasing animals is, what else can we do to set them up for success in the wild? So we're thinking about, we already bring them kelp from the ocean. So there's 3 of us on staff that have fishing license, so we can collect kelp from the beach, which has all their natural inverts that they would be eating, insects. Sorry, I default to zoo language sometimes. And then the ocean's not quiet, but our flight pen is quiet. So like, do we figure out decibels of ocean noise and go record at Colo Point the sounds and then play that on repeat? Do we try to do some predator training, like raccoons? That's a big one. Skunks. They're quiet, but maybe the smell. Maybe we could train them to run away from the smell or something. So that's just kind of where we're constantly thinking, what other role and support role can we play in this program, because we have so many birds in one area at one time, which in the field you typically don't, right? Like you're going to abandon and let them go and just kind of monitor. So very exciting stuff. If y'all have any ideas, let us know. But I think I talked way longer than I was supposed to. I'm so sorry. But thank you guys so much. I do want to say that this program is only possible because of our dedicated team at the zoo. And then that includes our plover team, our veterinary team, our facilities team, who fixes everything that I break, education, marketing, and then obviously all our partners down below, including y'all. We're just really, really thankful that we get to be a part of this program and we get to be a part of saving this incredible species. We're very lucky. So thank you all. Sorry I talked so long. Ooh, I believe we filled out some grants. I'm sorry, not my section of it. But our on-site plover program, it is coming out of our zoo operating budget. So we set a chunk aside out of our zoo operating budget to go towards our plover program. So that's staff time. So we have a team of at least 2 managers right now that are a part of the program. And then we have anywhere, depending on the year, 5 to 7 keepers. And they are dedicating anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, 3 to 5 times a day. So we're already paying those staff to be here, but then we're going to pay for overtime for those staff. And a lot of our equipment did come out of grants. Or did you guys give us money for that? Question mark. But we don't get any federal funding. So Santa Barbara Zoo is a nonprofit. Yeah. So a lot of ours is grants and our lovely membership if y'all want to join. I'm biased. That is a great question. So our biggest one is called Zoofari Ball. It's in August. That's our big fundraiser that a lot of that goes to our operating budget. But then we have events throughout the year that supports us. So our next one coming up is Roar and Pour. So it's a wine tasting event that you get to wander the zoo after hours. Zoo Brew is another big one for us. You can just go to the Santa Barbara Zoo website. Yeah, I should have put that up there. Good point. Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot to repeat the last question, but it was about funding. This question is, do our staff solely work with plovers or do they work with other animals? Our plover team consists of keepers from every different area of the zoo. And so long story short, it used to historically just be our bird team. And then we changed the way that we manage our animals at the zoo and the way our teams are set up. And so now it's not just bird folks, it's people like me with a really heavy mammal background that get to learn something really cool. And they do this in addition to their regular job. So the expectation is if you want to be a part of the plover team, you need to be really efficient at your job because this is in addition to, we will absolutely support, but it's not a dedicated person. The only exception to that is when we get chicks in, we have someone solely working with those chicks. They're not going to work with any of our collection birds until they're cleared. So once they're cleared of HPAI, then that person can float around, but no other, they're not going to go up to our flight pen and work with any birds. And they're hopefully not going to work with any of our animal population at the zoo. And then, yes, come hang out in May. I'll be around. Yeah.
What have you been able to document or have anyone reported abandoned birds that were released from the zoo going out and raising chicks?
Yes, we just last year we had a male that raised was on a nest. I cannot tell you where that bird came from. I think it's yes. I think you sent photos. Yeah, I'm sure there is. But that one sticks out because that was the first one where Nadia got really excited and sent it along. But yeah, which is really exciting because that's the success of a program. We can release 139 birds, but if they're not breeding and integrating appropriately, we're not doing our job well. So that was really exciting. Nadia would have more of those statistics, and I can definitely ask her. She's on maternity leave, which is why I'm here. Sorry, y'all, you're stuck with me. So I can try to get those numbers, but I know we have seen resightings of our birds released successfully nesting. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I accidentally pressed that button, but it's still green. Oh, okay.
Okay, well, thank you, Kristen, so much for that. And we will go ahead and close the meeting for the evening. Thank you all so much for coming.